So good morning, everyone. I know I have been out for quite a bit. My apologies for that. I want to wish everybody a very good Wednesday morning. For persons who are still um, feeling the hurt, the pain of elections, I wish you a steady recovery, speedy recovery, all the best. And of course, we're in the Christmas season, so please let's be merry and fill in the good cheers of Christmas. I want to shout out all my listeners. I want to shout out all my colleagues, and I want all my listeners. I wish that you would be calling in today. Let us know that you're listening. Okay, and I want to say a special good morning to Mr. Kendall Elva. Thank you again for being here. And of course, anytime I call Mr. Elva, he is on board. He's very eager to come on the program.
Thank you, Renita, for extending a good morning to me. I would also like to reciprocate and extend warm wishes to you on this beautiful morning in what is a very wonderful country, which is St. Lucia. Also like to extend good morning to everyone who is viewing and listening to us out there. And I am extremely happy to be here to speak to some very important issues representing the Ministry of Equity. And just before I go any further, I would just like to commend you and Soufrière FM for putting together this wonderful program. It certainly helps to bring to light some of the good things that the Ministry of Equity is doing and the things that we can do as a society to improve the lives of each other, particularly those who are vulnerable among us. So kudos to you, Ms. Bondiemaitre, and the management and staff of Soufrière FM, and also by extension, the Soufrière Regional Development Foundation.
Thank you so very much for that, Mr. Elva. Indeed, they're doing a good job. Great staff. All right. This morning you said something about vulnerable. And of course, our topic this morning is about the vulnerable people matter. Before we continue, tell us, who do you think, or explain to listeners, who are the vulnerable people in our society?
I love this question.
Yes.
I am vulnerable. You are vulnerable.
Okay.
Every member of the society is vulnerable because we all do possess some risk factors that may affect our social functioning. And when I say social functioning, I basically refer to the various roles that we carry out as members of the society, as a father, as a child, a student, as a lawyer, or basically as an individual who's a community leader. We all have various roles to carry out. And what you find, things can happen to us in life. And these are things that may mitigate against our well-being, our ability to experience holistic health, not just physical health. So I will indicate that we are all vulnerable. The critical thing is that we experience various degrees of vulnerabilities and we are vulnerable to different things. And that's a critical thing because many times when we speak about social policy, we are always of the view that sometimes we should only target one set of individuals. And what that creates is that for persons who do not associate with being in a similar condition as these sets of individuals, they do not avail themselves to various social services. So for instance, there are persons who are of the view that being a victim of child abuse is something that is strongly and positively correlated to being from the lower socioeconomic class. But I'm sure you would agree with me that as a family case worker, you have children from various social economic backgrounds, children from well-off families who are victims of child abuse, whether it is emotional and even physical and even sexual. Even when you look at the whole issue of domestic violence, many of us would be quick to believe that it is only maybe women from rural communities, women who are struggling, who are the victims of domestic violence. But we know all too well that these sorts of situations who not only visit the doors of persons from poor families, but you have women who are married to prominent men and they to become victims of domestic violence. And also, just to look at it from a gender parity perspective, you also have men who are also victims of domestic violence. It may not be as common as is the case with women, but that basically goes to underscore the point that we need to be compassionate. We need to exercise solidarity when we see other members of society going through various tumultuous situations, when we see people are being deprived, when we see people are struggling to overcome barriers, whether it is poverty, whether it is those that are associated with being a woman. And we need to recognize that we never know. Today, maybe Kendall's turn to experience the difficulties of life, to experience the poverty, to experience social exclusion. And then tomorrow, God forbid, maybe yours. So the whole issue of vulnerability is one that we need to see it as all of us. We do. We are vulnerable. Everyone is vulnerable. All right. And I mean, as you would appreciate, it's just that it's an issue of being vulnerable to different factors or different risk factors in the society. But this is something that I would say every individual is vulnerable. I'm vulnerable.
I'm very happy, extremely happy that you clarified this,
Mhm.
because too many times you hear persons sit back, especially when there are situations like suicide and so on.
Right.
Somebody you will hear others say in the society that can never happen
Oui,
to me.
matin, je me connais, monsieur, quand il fait ça,
Yes, that
tout le
can-
bail, ok, monsieur
Oui.
marié, monsieur ni ish, monsieur n'a bon travail, pour qui ça, monsieur fait ça?
Right.
Mais comment toujours dit, tout le monde ni un différent bail, ça, c'est porté de les bail là qui pareil croisé moi. Là où expérience, il croisé, mais de les bail là côté, moi ça, deux bouteilles pliées, moi ça, goût against les, c'est pas tout le monde qui ça fait ça. So, c'est pour ça, nous, nous pour chaque compassion, qu'on, genre, société a.
True, very true, and thank you for the Creole. C'est pas les Creole much.
Oui, c'est pas là
That's
pour tout
why.
seul pour nous
Ça,
parler
oui.
créole. Nous ne parler créole
Definitely.
tout ici. Pour regarder nous c'est a bilingual country.
Oui.
Yes.
So c'est pour nous boire c'est Creole.
Moi mais créole là.
Pas
Moi
fait ça,
belle vie moi sorti capital qu'il tu sais ici moi mais créole là.
pas fait ça, c'est-
Just sitting here a bit and listening to the conversation, it prompted me to actually ask this question. You made a mention of abuse, and of course, we know there are many forms of abuse, but then when or how do we dictate that enough is enough to really walk away from it? Because sometimes it comes in disguise.
Well, I think what we need to do as a society is to really sensitize the population on what is abuse, the various forms of abuse. Now, many times we limit abuse to physical harm or injury being done to an individual, but then the very threat of making a statement where there's a possibility of you harming an individual, that is also a form of abuse or a form of violence. So violence does not necessarily have to only assume a physical form like punching somebody or tripping somebody or fighting with an individual. And I think what happens is that sometimes people stay in situations and they are not aware that it is abusive or toxic, as we would say in this modern era. And there is a lot of abuse which happens from a psychological, emotional, and even social perspective. When we speak to each other, and sometimes we do it jokingly and we say, I'm black nabao. But when you examine the very bedrock of what has been said to you, it is replete with insults, it is replete with statements that are meant to undermine your confidence or the things that you are doing well in life. And that's why I believe that in terms of language, language is very, very powerful. And the things that we say to people, we need to try our utmost to ensure that we speak in a manner which is uplifting, a manner which is positive, as opposed to trying to bring individuals down. And there's what you call reflective practice. Now, Adam and Gadisi go more power. But some of les encourager tout le monde pour faire. Et Bible même ka dit ça. Pas aimer faire yon moun en bas pour de l'autre moun faire. So the implication of that statement basically is when you have said something to someone or you have engaged in a particular interaction with someone, go back and ask yourself within your quiet time, how would I have felt if somebody had done me a similar thing or said a similar thing to me? And in that way, I think it allows for us to account for our actions in a much better manner. And it allows for us to speak to people in a manner which is powerful and uplifting. But most times we don't put ourselves in people's shoes. We do not exhibit emotional intelligence. And a good thing about emotional intelligence is that we as a people, we need to put ourselves in people's shoes and ask ourselves, I mean, to say would buy sa EV, si amun do buy ko ha, kimanya ukai feel about ko. And if we could do these sorts of things, engage in that perspective taking or reflective practice, I think our interaction should be much better. Another thing too is that some people, based on how you were brought up, the maybe home setting in which you grew up in, a lot of things become normalized. So there is that whole issue of violence being normalized in our psyche and the way through which we interact with people. It has been happening for as long as I have known myself. And maybe no one has ever said to me, but why are you allowing this person to take advantage of you in that way? Like, the woman pa me kwese la vantay moun ka pon sou. Mais tout temps, c'est ça moun ka fait. So as much as possible, that's why I believe that there has to be public education campaigns when it comes to elevating the consciousness of people, so we know what is a dignified and respectful set of statements when people interact with us. So sometimes it's not even the fault of the persons who are experiencing that abuse, that violence. They may just not know better because this is what some of them have been used to. And one other thing too is that sometimes you may want to leave a situation, but maybe because of the role that this person is playing in your life, there may be a dependency that you may have. At the end of the day, that person may be the one to be paying the bills. Now, I am not saying that any individual who's been abused is supposed to stay in that situation, but I'm just reflecting on the realities of women or even children who are being abused. Sometimes maybe because of the position the person holds in society. And so are we empowering our individuals enough so that no matter who the person is, no matter how high up the person is in a society, they could stand up and go to the right social services for assistance, be it the family courts, be it human services, because we do have a lot of agencies which exist as part of the mandate to ensure that these individuals receive the holistic assistance that they require.
To add to that also, Mr. Kendall Elva, I believe that some of our policies and even our judicial system needs to change to accommodate, especially persons who are being abused. Because too many times you would hear, even sometimes persons who have been violated sexually, they will tell you, I'd rather just not even report it. I'd rather not even go to court. Because it's like I'm being ripped all over again.
Well, yeah.
And even then, sometimes the judiciary system is like the process is so long that you find some people say enough is enough.
Let's forget about it.
You know, and even to what you said, Miss, I was so happy to hear Mr. Kendall ever tell you about certain behaviors being normalized in society, because what you find is that many people look at, and I said that the last time I was on the program, persons look at persons who have been abused and say, you want us, you can flex, you can assault, you can assault, you can
right.
But nobody, I guess persons are not aware that it's really psychological, that abuse is psychological. So what it does, it breaks down, it's like it breaks you down psychologically, okay? And because of that, you become okay. Maybe I'm the one who's doing something wrong. I'm the one who is at fault. So then you stay there. And not even that, sometimes you don't have the support to get out. You need support. Hardly anybody who's been abused can do it on their own. They need the support. So I always encourage persons to speak out. Have this, even though if it's not a counselor, but have this one person you can speak to. Just recently, I was watching a series, You Stood By. It was about domestic violence. And it showed you on exactly what you were saying, the prominent members of society. They were the ones beating up on the wives, the CEOs and so on. And then one lady had to commit suicide and so on in the series, and it was so sad. And somebody brought about, why is the person who's been abused who had to suffer the consequences and not
Right,
the
right.
abuser?
Yeah, most definitely.
So it showed you that this wife went to the police, and because of who the individual was,
The
they
system
told
protected
her,
the police officer.
they protected her.
Unfortunately,
And it
unfortunately.
happens even in separation. So this is why I'm saying, and I'm happy to hear you say, persons need to be empowered.
Right, right.
So we need to be empowered. You need to have somebody to speak to and develop your support system, because you need a support system to get out of this abuse. Because too many times we hide, because we have been socialized to keep it at home, keep it between us. Don't air your dirty laundry.
Right.
Okay? Leave it between you and your husband too many times. And then this person is there, the wife or the husband is there dying in the name of marriage and keeping it private.
Yeah.
No. So anytime you feel, of course, that situation is overwhelming, you feel threatened, anything, go out there, speak about it, get help.
Renita, another issue I would like to bring to the fore is the whole issue of elder abuse.
Definitely.
The birth rate in St. Lucia has been on a decline. And what you recognize is that our pyramid is increasingly changing shape, whereby our demographical trend is reflecting that we are transitioning into an aging population. And, as an elderly individual, as part of that process of aging, some people suffer dementia and they enter a state of frequent forgetfulness. And what I find is that as a society, we need to be a bit more empathetic towards these situations, because we never know when we get older or more mature in age whether we will not suffer the same set of situations. And a lot of elderly individuals have been taken advantage of, to the extent where I could say that they are not being treated in a dignified manner. And I always say that these are individuals who would have given back immensely to the society, not solely based on their contribution to our economic development as farmers and in our factories or in other place where they would have worked, but that is somebody who was there for you and who brought you up, who instilled values in you. And no matter whatever state that the person is in when it comes to mental health, we need to always recognize that this is still an individual, and that person possesses all the rights which are stipulated in the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. And you find that many times we exclude persons who are elderly from family activities. We do not do activities at the community level that cater for the needs. So a number of them are shut in. We don't visit them as we're supposed to, unless it's the Christmas season or the birthdays. And I just want to encourage individuals to be a bit more cognizant of the situations and experiences of persons who are elderly. These individuals face financial abuse, where you have instances, some of them may not be literate, and some family members or other persons who are taking care of them may come in, take care of them, basically for them to benefit from these elderly individuals passing over some asset that they have without the informed consent. And that's a very important term. Yes, the person might have affixed their signature, but was that being done under the right condition? Or was the person being manipulated to do so? And manipulation can happen in a very positive manner. The word manipulation, sometimes we think is just only negativity, but people can come and treat you nice just for them to persuade you to give them something, you understand? So these are things that we observe to be on the rise in St. Lucia in terms of the amount of respect that we shower our elderly members of the population with. And as much as possible, we need to ensure that we respect these individuals and we include them in activities, and we speak to them in ways where they feel appreciated.
Again, very valid point. And Mr. Elva, I am also elated to know that there is a policy being drafted. Well, I'm not sure if it has been completed on elder care.
Right,
I
right.
would
For older
love,
persons.
yes, for older persons. So I would love, I will be inviting one of these members. Miss Alcid, I'm calling your name. You heard me, Miss Alcid.
Yes, yes,
So I
yes.
will be inviting Miss Alcid or one of the members of the elder care unit on board here so they can speak on the policies because I do not have a copy and I cannot speak of what the policy speaks to.
Right, right,
But
right.
I am quite elated that there is a policy. And something I noticed also, Mr. Elva, is that there are laws. And a lot of these laws are not enforced, it's not enacted. So, for example, you find neglect. For example, neglect to a child. I cannot speak to an older person because, like I said, I'm not sure what governs as yet.
Right,
I cannot
yeah.
speak to that. But, like, for example, neglect. A parent neglecting a child. How many times are these parents arrested? How many times these parents are taken to task? Even when we as social workers go out there, okay, and rally for that, you find, of course, many times what what we were doing is, hey, we need to remove this child in that situation. And the parents go free. You know what is being said to us? And many times it has been said, Lottie, you want my knife or not? So right now we need to work with the families and we need to enact laws because unless people are not taken to task before the elderly and the children, things will not change. Because like I said, I was on the program recently, I think some time ago with Miss Andrew, and we did say, like you find a lot of older persons come in, they take their wealth, they do whatever, and what do you know next thing? They're begging comfort.
Right.
They have nothing. Whatever, we want to take them to Comfort Bay. And Comfort Bay is a place for persons with low socio-economic status, persons who cannot maintain, persons who have no family. But you find persons with property and so on go to Comfort Bay because their family members don't want to take care of them. And as soon as they're deceased, they're not even buried yet.
Yes.
They go in and will rid the wheel.
Yeah.
So I'm saying one thing the government should do. Honestly, they should. If you are going to Comfort Bay, everything you have goes to the government. So let us see the family members don't buck up and do something about it. Too many times people are taking advantage of. And I'm so happy to hear you bring out that point because this is a very sore point.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. And we need to take better care of our elders.
Renita,
so
another
in the policy that I'm hoping in the policy that especially children
right.
are held accountable for their parents.
Right.
Go ahead, Mr.
Another thing I want to mention, since we're talking about the plight of the vulnerable, in addition to the policy for elderly persons, I know that a lot of work is being done currently with developing a policy to respond adequately and comprehensively to the needs of persons who are differently abled. And we recently had a series of consultation where we went into Babono, Vieux-Fort, and also the consultant was at the Ministry of Equity, dialoguing with the various social workers to find out some of the areas that we need to strengthen as it relates to dealing with individuals with disabilities. So that is another step in the right direction because these are a group of individuals who are excluded. Yes, there is some good work which is happening. For instance, in the Ministry of Equity at present, there's what you call the Child Disability Grant. So once the proper assessment has been done by a medical doctor and then the parent has applied through the Ministry of Equity, that household receives a monthly cash transfer, which they utilize to attend to the materialistic and other needs of that particular child. And another thing that we are doing as a Ministry of Equity as it relates to responding to the needs of vulnerable people is that we are trying to ensure that these people could participate in the various activities in the society, particularly economic participation. So we are providing support to various organizations who work with persons with disability so that they could implement projects that generate employment or generate an income, so that these individuals experience a greater sense of dignity, that they do not necessarily have to rely on the state or a family member for everything that they require for them to enjoy life. But then they, as you and I, we could go out there, learn a skill and get a job. These individuals too, we need to see them in that light, that they have a right to work. And as much as possible, the Ministry of Equity is providing support. I know that we work with the council that is responsible for persons with disability. The ministry provides assistance and financial and technical, yeah, to ensure that they are able to meet the mandate. So there's quite a bit that the Ministry of Equity is doing to ensure that these people could participate in the economic activities of this country, and also socially too. I mean, over the years, our social transformation officers, our social workers at Human Services, they have been out there doing sensitization drives to ensure that the manner in which we interact with persons with disability, it is more reflective of some of the struggles that they experience, and it is one which is more empowering. So these are all positive trends that I recognize in the Ministry of Equity. Another policy which I know which has been worked on feverishly is that of the National Mental Wellness Policy. Mental wellness is an area which has not received the attention it deserves. And even whilst boarding a bus coming to Soufrière, that is by the traffic light in Vieux-Fort, I would have witnessed an individual who clearly he sat on the floor, and you could see he was talking to himself. Now, that was not private speech as Piaget would suggest, but you could see that it was a symptom of an individual who needs some assistance from a mental health perspective. And once again, there has been broad consultation. And what I like about these consultations is that we are going down to the community level to allow for our citizens, our community leaders, our mothers, our fathers, our children to have their say in terms of ensuring that these policies are gender sensitive. It respects the rights that we all have as human beings, and it is there to ensure that these individuals, they receive the assistance that they require for them to participate in society. We all have a right to work. We all have a right to join groups. We all have a right to recreate. So it's not because you have a mental illness that as a state, we should not guarantee these rights. And I want to commend the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Equity. I mean, they are collaborating to ensure that this particular policy comes to fruition pretty quickly. And even in terms of our own ministry, which is the Ministry of Equity, Renita, social issues are never easy for one to deal with. And that is because of the very nature of the causes of some of these social issues. This is not like the natural science. If you flip the switch and there is electricity running through that circuit, then the light automatically comes on. Human beings are not robots. And as such, there's a lot of sophistication. There are lots of nuances. And notwithstanding, I do understand that we need to do more, and we are working to do more. But as a Ministry of Equity, there's a lot of wonderful work. We have had the accepting of the National Social Protection Policy by the previous Cabinet of Ministers, and that has been a process that started as way back as maybe 2012, 2015, and so a lot of work was put into that social protection policy. And in terms of that particular policy, what it is meant to do is to ensure that the Ministry of Equity. Now, when you're talking about social protection, and on parle about protection sociale, ça, moi, ka essayer de c'est l'année différent by nous ka expériencer en la vie, qui ka fait la vie plus difficile ban nous. Ou perd un moun en famille, ou vient pas qu'à travail, ou fait un petit mamay, et ben un moun abusé. Ça, c'est différents bagages nous avons expérimenté en la vie, qui ça chebe nous derrière, qui ça empêche nous aller pour garder pour un job. Et puis, ça, nous avons fait, et puis, policy, protection pour bail social, c'est that qui nous kon yon gouvernement, yon ministry, nous ka mettre bagay en place pour ouais that moun qui besoin assistant yo ka hen assistant. So nous ça on ka créer assistant public by moun qui ka expérience pauvreté. Et puis yon nan se ba la moi vle di about ça. Ça c'est un bon petit programme. Côté qui tous les mois nous ka bay Kaila en l'argent. Il peut c'est 2 secondes et bien 4 secondes. Mais ça dépend de combien de monde ka ou en Kaila et puis il dépend de sous qui qualité difficulté c'est même Kaila ka expériencer. Et pour nous décider qu'on yon ministre qui laisse pour bay assistant l'année différents officiers sociaux qui ka travail et puis welfare département welfare. C'est moun ça ka visiter yo ka demander différentes questions. Les questions about comment maman yoni est-ce ou toujours ka hen manger est-ce ou ni té qui ça ou ni kayo est-ce ou une connexion glo est-ce ou internet kayo est-ce ou ni courant en kayo yo ka demander différentes questions qui malade Jean kayo ni et puis les nous de toutes ces questions ça nous ka mettre ça à sous computer le computer ka ban nous un score so il ka dit nous qui autant pauvreté ou ka expériencer qu'on yon famille et puis c'est les nous un score ça then nous ka décider OK moun ça pas ka l'expérience pauvreté et moun ça pas besoin assistant from gouvernement mais ça pas means nous pas continuer travailler plus because vous savez les venir pour ressources c'est parti bon nous ni tout gouvernement ni en limitation les venir pour compter l'argent yo ça investir en derrière des moun qui pauvres mais si comme les yo calculer score et puis yo hen whereby pauvreté ça la na chay pauvreté en famille nous ka essayer bay moun ça en temps l'argent tous les mois c'est pas des bay l'argent les ou à ce programme ça là yo ka aussi ba ou assistance assistant moun en famille so nous ka rendre ou tout moun nous ka aussi ba ou en cadre côté qui si ou dans pièce facilité santé ça c'est health center ou Saint Jude ou OKEU et pour montrer cadre ça ou pas une poupée pour remède ou pas une poupée pour visitation ça veut dire oui ou pas une poupée c'est tabac vous comprenez so là un chay bon travail ministre écoute qu'a fait il venait pour aider moun qui a expérimenté pauvreté et quand pile de les ouais nous en société nous vite pour coûter chez et nous pas capable recogniser c'est pourquoi nous qu'a fait en société en l'autre bail moi voulais dire about programme ça en pile de les moun qui do well nous ka just buy mon assistant just buy l'argent mais c'est pas ça tout seul comment dire l'assistant médical nous ka buy yo là regarder en bas Saint Lucia Social Development Fund nous ka buy assistant pour yon hekayo nous ka buy assistant pour ces familles ça gain livre gain uniforme local nous aussi si c'est un jeune garçon ou un jeune garçon délai il pas coûter maman il pas coûter papa et que ça nous qu'on yon ministre nous pas vle jeune garçon et ben jeune fille qu'engager en bail criminel so nous ni différents moun pour parler bayo advice counsel pour être qui ça kan bete yo si c'est un trauma yo ni c'est bail ça c'est bail écoute qui yo kay développer coping skills mais bail la man relève dire c'est nous qu'on ministre nous ka essayer pour développer moun en manière qui holistique so c'est pas juste si on la besoin pour gagner pain et bien faire France nous ka garder toute la besoin uni et nous ka essayer pour mettre bagay en place nous ka faire un officier social travail pour voir qui toute la besoin ka une intention et ça c'est yon bail moi aimer about ministère moi ka travail en dedans Renita Bondiemaitre actuellement nous avons un programme qui est coup de main cercle ici et qu'est-ce qu'on a programme ça nous des toi nous va couiller femme qui workers so yo ka travailler puis c'est mon qui expérience en chaque pauvreté et puis yo ka essayer ouais date qui c'est bail là qui ka empêcher yo gommer pauvreté nous avons assistant. So, comment dire, assistant pour faire paiement local, assistant pour garder pour bof certificat, assistant pour garder pour les mots NIS, assistant côté qui s'ouvre apprendre un petit trade, vous voulez apprendre coup, vous voulez apprendre faire bonbon. C'est bah sur ça fait, il s'amène là en famille. Vous voulez établir un petit business, vous voulez vivre matcher CXC ou so c'est famille qui se que ça va comme ce programme là. Yo ka travail et puis c'est famille. So en pile de quand les gens qui parler about assistant gouvernement ka bay monde de nous ka dit c'est bay handout. Mais yon ba m'a dit si yon moun boudin vide, il passe à debout. So moun ni pour ni manger. So c'est pour ça nous ka bay délai si c'est un voucher pour écouter merci et ben délai nous ka bay l'argent tous les mois. Mais c'est pas ça nous ka fait. Nous ka travailler puis famille, nous ka chiber là mes famille. Et puis nous ka travailler pour date qui yo ni ces skill là, yo ni ces knowledge là, côté que yo ça debout à son own compte quoi yo. En l'autre bail moi voulais dire nous ka faire con.
Avant de continuer, monde qui a écouté, qui veut savoir, bon, si moi dans cette situation et que moi veux assistant, qui manière là je vais carte assistant ça, on dit qu'on coûte bien cette ici. Bon, si moi dans cette situation, moi son famille, et ma have pour une famille, et coûte bien cette ici, ma je mettons ça, ma have pour aller. Qui manière pour moi ça vient c'est qualité c'est help ça là, pour moi aller, pour moi un assistant.
Yo ba na about ministre écoutez, c'est nous ni travailler nous ou ça nous à dans office tout au long c'est ici. Ou pas travailler en Soufrière à cause des familles case social worker. Bon même si on pas travailler dans welfare department là, les yo venir visiter ou ni yon duty pour faire un referral pour dire OK ça pas really travail moi mais n'a mettez en dans contact et puis welfare officer pour Soufrière. Just bon matin madame Kouyeme avec madame la dit besoin tak assistant moi bail ouais là soy. Et ouais ça bail moi kana shy call about. Et moi ka encourager gouvernement pour faire un plus gros investissement là venir pour public assistance programme parce que chaque monde qui est en figue chaque c'est monde ça qui vient guanao et délai yo pas ni personne pour ba yo anti les mains yo pas ça gain manger yo pas ça petit bill yo ni et puis madame la couille moi m'a dit well c'est pas travail moi exactement mais since moi travaille en ministère moi kay ba ou yon numéro couille mademoiselle ça bon si vous couille toi quoi pour pas ni vie couille moi OK now ça c'est pas qui tout important là nous va faire referral so moi même ça follow up the welfare officer il même couiller madame là et ben moi ça engager en meeting côté qui yo da ça joindre but boba about ministry c'est tout au lieu c'est ici l'année officier qui a représenté ministère et au savent l'année constituency council ou connaître poète là connaître pasteur ou connaître Soufrière Development Foundation ban Glendia c'est tout ce monde ça même si on pas travailler dans ministère mais yo même sous visiter yo ka dire OK contacter mademoiselle ça c'est Bondiemaitre et bien contacter Michel ça c'est welfare officer nous vous comprenez so l'année différentes manières on s'a contacté nous on s'ha couillé ministère direct les mots c'est 4 6 8 5 4 0 yon moi quoi c'est le mot so c'est 08 OK oh merci so on y a quoi so 468 5108 right but it's about ça on ça map your number so c'est ça va ça mais moi presque un tout hein all right so 468 5 kia
5108
OK 468 5108 so quel mot ça
Elva and Miss Renita, it's been quite an interesting conversation. I've been sharing experience I had on the ground, going into those communities where indeed, vulnerable persons and carrying out the survey, which of course will have to be presented in the form, and doing your follow-ups where those very same persons will say, Miss, up to now, nobody came to me. What is happening if all the information you're talking about? So with such approach, I mean, we're speaking of how can there be? Is it more transparency?
Mhm.
Is it more follow-ups? Is it like there is a miss somewhere on the
Mhm,
ground?
mhm. Okay, one of the things that I can say is that as a Ministry of Equity, we have taken steps to strengthen our referral systems so that there is the appropriate following up to ensure that the assistance reaches the individual it has to reach. I could also say that there is a big thrust or movement in the Ministry of Equity for our various field officers to be more aggressive in terms of their presence in their community. And we have various field officers whom people can contact for assistance. You have family case workers, they work with the Division of Human Services for children who are in need of care and protection. You also have your community development officers or social transformation officers. They are supposed to be working very closely with community-based organizations and other vulnerable groups at the community level to ensure that people are seeing and feeling the presence of the Ministry of Equity. We also have our welfare officers who are working to administer the public assistance program. That's a program where we give the individuals who are poor and indigent the monthly cash transfer and other forms of assistance. We also have the St. Lucia Social Development Fund. They too have a whole cadre of field officers who provide psychosocial support, housing assistance, educational assistance. So that is a message that we have been impressing on our field officers, that they need to be more out there. The community residents need to feel the presence. They need to be having that impact. So we also have another system in place, which is known as a feedback and redress mechanism. There are individuals who might have applied for assistance from the Ministry of Equity, and maybe they did not get the assistance, and there could be several reasons why. Like I said to you, we have a national eligibility test which is being administered by our welfare officers and also officers attached to the Central Social Development Fund. And that is what we use to determine whether somebody qualifies for assistance. We do not do that just based on our own subjective judgment, but we are objective, and based on the score that the individual comes up with, then we would determine, well, okay, that person is poor or indigent or non-poor. But that is based on a series of questions being asked, as I explained earlier on in the Creole. Now, in the event where you believe that you were not treated in the right way by the Ministry of Equity, we do have a system where you could file in your complaint. The same manner, if a police officer has done something to you where he or she has infringed upon your rights, then you could go to that police complaint unit and file in a report. So that is a system that we have where you come into the Ministry of Equity through that feedback and redress mechanism, and we are going to respond. And now I could assure you that a critical aspect of it is that in order to preserve the independence of the process, because somebody could say, well, oh, the Ministry of Equity is just protecting its own self. No. We have a committee of individuals who do not work with the Ministry of Equity, and they would be the ones to review whatever complaints that the individual has, and then they would now make recommendations to the Ministry of Equity that, hey, as a ministry, you did this right, kudos, great stuff. You made an error there. You need to go back and revisit that case and ensure that that person receives the assistance. So we, as a ministry, we are looking to improve our customer service to ensure that whoever comes, to face our receptionists, that they feel welcome. They feel that this is a place where they could discuss whatever is affecting them, and that we, as social workers, we always do training for our social workers to ensure that they treat individuals in a dignified and respectful manner, in a manner which is empowering. So there's a lot of work, I could say to you, which has been happening to ensure that as a ministry, we do not leave anybody behind, and we really address their concerns in a manner which is holistic and appropriate. Yeah.
And something further as well. Mr. Elva, you
Mhm.
did mention that it's a process.
Yeah.
And many people don't understand that it's a process and a process takes time. Because people always believe, because they'll come into the office and say, ti madam na po yung information mo, ipakakapili mo eh.
Yeah.
Ibuzemiti mo le bagay la. I need to let people know that it is not up to the welfare officer to determine whether you come on the list or not. Like Mr. Elva said, there is a process.
Mhm.
It goes through a system, okay? And it takes time. So if somebody has given the information out there and they're not getting a feedback, like Mr. Elva said,
Mhm.
come in, call, follow up. It takes some time. And persons, they have the wrong concept that
Mhm.
officer, welfare officer akiba mi male, you
Mhm,
welfare officer
mhm,
akiba ba moi,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
guys
yeah.
are moi. So many
Mhm.
times I've heard that, and
Yeah.
I have to say to the public, if you are listening, this is the wrong concept,
Mhm,
okay? Because there is a system,
Mhm.
like you said,
Yeah.
it goes through, and it's either you qualify or you don't qualify. So it's not
Yeah.
up to the welfare officer. And if you don't hear from the welfare officer, of course you can call in, you can follow up. All right. I thank you for that. Before we continue, I would like to say thank you for persons who have made their comments, like Jamila Silis, you are listening. She said, good morning. Magdalene Daniel, Sakafet Kendall Elva.
Yes, yes, yes.
Favor Theodore, very well spoken, Kendall. Excellent points raised. We have Sheldon Lionel. I might say the younger people are not as patient or caring towards the seniors as before, and I don't think it's going to change. So, what do you think will happen in the near future? Question. And Aya Daniel just said, great job, Elva. All right, so this question that we will ask Mr. Elva from Sheldon.
Which one?
The younger people do not care about our senior citizens, and I don't think it's going to change. So, what do you think will happen in the near future?
I am optimistic that situations and others remain as they currently exist. And I think we need to continue our public education campaigns when it comes to getting people to appreciate the elderly members of the society. So I think the changing of the psyche of the nation and our young people is something that is needed, and we need to find creative ways to really get that message to them, for them to change the way that they see individuals who are elderly. Now, that is not to say that every young person sees their grandparents in a similar light. There are lots of young persons who are very nice and friendly when it comes to meeting the needs of persons who are elderly. Another conversation which I am aware of, but again, no concrete steps have been taken towards it. There is the idea being floated around that what legislation can you put in place to encourage younger family members to take care of the elderly members? There are societies and countries where such laws exist. So, in a similar manner, where if a mother exposes a child to maltreatment or neglects meeting the needs of a child, and as you indicated, the legislation says that this mother can be prosecuted and sanctioned. And so we need to ask ourselves as a society, considering various human rights issues, considering various issues putting into morality, whether we are at a point and whether the problem that is the best way to resolve it by actually legislating it and saying that you have a responsibility to take care of your elderly mother or father, and if you don't do so, then the law will be holding you accountable. Now, there are some issues with that particular perspective. I mean, we have a discussion, so it's always good to look at all aspects of the issue. In some instances, some people may not come back and maybe take care of an elderly member because they don't have the means of doing so financially and otherwise. Now, this is not me making an excuse at all for that. I believe no matter what, no matter how difficult it is, you should always try to share the little that you have especially towards somebody who contributed towards the own upbringing as an elderly mother. So that's a consideration. And earlier on, like in terms of sometimes when you utilize the law to do certain things, what you I mean, sometimes when you utilize the law and then you have a sanction, it's like I'm sure you have with the situation where for fathers who do not pay child maintenance, now it happens, eh? So they don't pay child maintenance, and that's not a good thing. All fathers should pay their child maintenance, and the amount is not even a lot of money. And so sometimes
that needs to be revised.
yes, it needs to be revised for sure. It needs to be increased.
Yes.
But then the conundrum that a magistrate may find his or herself in is, do I send that father to Borderley to spend 6 months, a year? And then when I do that, that means the same money he was not paying, he's still not going to pay it because he's at Borderley. So that's why I say it's a very nuanced issue as to in terms of trying to solve that particular matter using legislation. But there are people who believe that this is something that we need to consider in terms of the same way we did for children. And as they say, once a man, twice a child. That's not to suggest that an elderly person is being reduced to the developmental state of a child, because these are people who have done a lot for society. So we still need to see them as the persons who laid the foundation. But for me, what I can say is that we need to continue encouraging our young people, our other members of society, to be a bit more empathetic. And I think it is a good move that we are now establishing or looking to create a policy to address some of these issues on the part of the Ministry of Health. And I also note that there is a unit specifically established to deal with issues affecting our elderly population. So I believe that the technocrats in that department and collectively, with consultation as a society, we can find a middle way in terms of arresting that particular issue.
And something else, I always believe in modeling behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So from the family's perspective,
Mm-hmm.
parents, model behavior to your children. Because if you are treating your parents bad, it will happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's a ripple effect. Model the behavior. Start treating, and even not your parents. There are elder persons out there. You pass them on the street. Sometimes they ask for a ride, or even boarding the public bus to see the kind of treatment they get from the bus drivers
most
and
definitely.
other passengers. So start modeling the behavior so the younger persons will see how the elder persons are treated, and then even in schools now.
Right.
Even in schools now, start introducing the children to all the persons. Like visit places like Comfort Bay, spend a day, work with them, feed them, do something for the persons. Communities where they have the Club 60s, go in there, volunteer your time, or even you as a parent, take your child in there, give something, donate. So if we start putting in these practices in our young children, of course they will grow with it. Even you're at home, like if you live with your parents or you interact with your parents, you show your children, we are cooking for grandma, or you are doing stuff, sit and let me do that. So
if I cook for grandma, she may get hypertension.
Okay.
Well, I'm looking to improve my culinary skills, eh? Because you know the elderly, they have many of them have special dietary needs.
Yes.
So you have to make sure that if you cook it for grandma, that you actually know how to cook.
Okay. So all this we can try. So we don't always wait on the policies out there, but we have to start from the home, from the roots. Okay, because too many times I'm witnessing it right there in the home or even on your public bus.
Another thing I want to say on that issue, sometimes we are good at treating our very own grandparents or elderly mothers in the right way because they are of a blood relatedness to us. So naturally, we will be more caring towards them. But I think that spirit of care is supposed to be extended towards every individual who is elderly, because you have to ask yourself that yes, you are treating your elderly mother in a good way, and I'm sure you want other persons to treat your elderly mother in a good way. So that is why you now need to treat other
Others,
elderly
right.
persons in a good way, not just your grandmother or your elderly father. And that's why I said that, and it's a golden rule. You have to do unto others what you want others to do unto you. And even, I'm sure you would want to be treated in a good way when you turn elderly. And
Yes.
so is what you give out into the universe, it will come back to you.
Definitely.
So as you are saying, being as little as you are as a child or a young adult,
Go to
it is incumbent
company.
upon all of us
Yes, go to
for us
different
to express
places.
love
Definitely.
and show that we really appreciate these elderly individuals. And when it's you see, for me, I do like talking to elderly people. Remember earlier on, I indicated that when it comes to the Creole language, it is something that I believe is quite empowering to be able to speak it. And like you were saying, it should not be only during Creole Heritage Month or October, because there's a lot that we could learn from the elderly so that we do not repeat certain mistakes of the past. So they to me are an excellent reservoir of indirect experience. And there's so much wealth that there is for us to learn from these individuals. There's a lot of wisdom that these individuals, whenever you talk to them, that they will share with you. And I believe that this is why we need to really appreciate and really honor these individuals. And I could recall in Bellevue, every Christmas season, we would have a Christmas elderly lunch. And we would invite all the elderly residents in the community. Those who are shutting would actually bring the lunch to their homes. And, that was something that the elderly people appreciated so much. And you saying it's just a little activity you're doing. And some of them would say, "Where it's garçon, bonne ka ibe nou?" You understand?
Yes, they do
I
say that.
mean, so such acts of kindness really show them that we love them, we appreciate them, we respect them, and it means that we also recognizing them, because it almost appears that when you're an elderly, is like you are no longer part of the society, so you are pushed aside. And doing things where you actually recognize the elderly, it sort of gives them a sense of empowerment. It gives them a sense of belongingness, a sense of being connected to the society. And these are things that we should really, really, really try to push. Yeah.
And something I wanted to touch base on as
Mhm.
well. When everywhere you go, I'm cut out of it. And
Mhm.
I feel so terrible that you see all the opportunities
Mhm, mhm.
up to 35.
Right,
The
right, right,
youth.
right.
Everything is for the youth. So when you're no longer a youth,
Right, right. What
what
is
are
there for you?
things for you? And we
Mhm,
talk
mhm,
about the elderly, which is so true.
mhm, mhm,
Because so many people have given so much to society,
mhm,
and it's
mhm.
like they pushed aside.
Right,
What
right,
is
right.
in place? I'm asking
Mhm,
you,
mhm,
so
mhm,
that
mhm, mhm.
what can be put in place for older persons? Like you find everything is for the youth, a cut-off age of 35,
Right,
now
right,
for the
right.
youth. So what
Yeah.
can be put in place for older persons?
Uh-huh,
Like,
uh-huh.
okay, I'm at
But
retirement
but let me say
age.
something. With regards to the Central Social Development Fund,
Mhm.
they have what you call the home care program, and most of the clientele would be persons who are elderly. And under that program, you would have various workers visiting the elderly to do basic health checks, keep them company, assist with basic house chores. So that to me is a very good program, and I understand that it will be expanded, and I think it runs from a Monday to a Friday, and there is a proposal to have it from Sunday to Sunday. So these are some steps in the right direction. A number of families are welcoming that kind of assistance, because it frees up the members of the family that would have otherwise have to stay home to provide care and unpaid care. And that is something that the government of St. Lucia is looking at, where you have people staying home to take care of the elderly or a child who is ill. And then these people cannot really go out to earn a living or to achieve all the goals that they have. And that whole issue of unpaid care work is something that we need to address as a society at the soonest. But in terms of the San Lucia Social Development Fund, that is an excellent initiative on their part. and the government of St. Lucia is in full support of it. So that is one of the programs intended to foster the social inclusion of individuals who are elderly. In terms of what else can be done, Renita, it's not only the government that has a role to play in terms of fostering social inclusion for our elderly. Every individual, regardless of your age, you can make a contribution. Like you were saying, the little things, visiting them, helping them with a basic chore in the house or in the yard, saying hello, greeting them pleasantly, asking them how they are doing. So on an individual level, there is a lot that we can do. And I just want to recognize the contribution of our churches when it comes to that. I know that our churches, our Christians, a lot of the women on a Sunday, you would find that they go out in the community and they would visit the shut-ins, those who are ill. I know my mother does that religiously, and my mother likes to do that. And so, even sometimes there's a lady that my mother would visit. And when she has not seen my mother, maybe a couple of Sundays, she's like, come on, mama, maka, wow, dig mama che. So at the end of the day, these little visitations and holding these conversations with them makes them feel that, they're appreciated and we know that they are there. Another thing is that we, as you indicated, I note we have a lot of outdoor gyms. I know Mikud just recently established one, and that is wonderful. And kudos to the parliamentary rep and the Mikud North Constituency Council. Great stuff. But I think we need to also establish facilities, spaces where our elderly can recreate. Yes, they may not be able to run as well. Yeah, you understand. So yes, they may not be able to run as fast or be as fit as I am. Well, hopefully, But there are things that they can do from a physical perspective, and we need to create the space for them. So there are areas where you have daycare centers where they would have a whole bunch of activities for these individuals. So these are things that we could consider in terms of our elderly. I would really like to see more of our community groups, our community leaders implementing activities that recognize the contribution of the elderly, create opportunities for them to socialize, and not just when somebody dies in a community, because that's the time you will see most of the elderly people coming out when somebody dies, But it doesn't have to be like that. We could organize social, cultural activities for these individuals. Another thing too, which can be done, like I mentioned earlier on, these people are a huge reservoir of intelligence, wisdom, and lived experiences. We need to sort of create programs where they could pass on some of that experience to strengthen our learning. So many times when we conceptualize mentorship programs, we don't include the elderly as mentors. It is typically persons who do very well in life as entrepreneurs or people who have decent jobs in government or the private sector. But hey, there's nothing wrong in having a program. Yeah, you skew it within the context of preserving our cultural heritage and having the elderly people who are good at playing the drums to teach the younger ones how to play the drums. Because sometimes these cultural icons, they pass away. And how do we continue the legacy? Yes, there are things that we do. We give them the flowers before they die in some instances. But I think preserving someone's legacy is strongest when whatever they were doing, it continues. And they had a role to play in terms of teaching the younger generation how to do this. You understand? So there are lots of little things that we could do in terms of bringing back our elderly people in the society. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Our time, I'm just looking at it because soon after it's 12, you'll start seeing our host will watch his side. So we have to be closing up. So Mr. Elva, can you tell us some of the other policies, if there are, that would protect our people? And of course, you said that all of us are vulnerable, but especially persons who are affected.
Yeah, so there are lots of policies. Like I mentioned, the Ministry of Equity has the social protection policy, and that policy has been used to transform the Ministry of Equity to make it more responsive to the needs of the poor, the indigent, and other vulnerable populations in our society. And I could say that because of this policy, we have been seeing more people benefiting from the programs of the Ministry of Equity. And we will continue to work to ensure that we touch the lives of many more individuals. And I would just like to commend the staff of the Ministry of Equity, recognize the efforts of Honorable Joachim Henry, who was our minister, our permanent secretary, Dr. Sharon Hippolyte Emmanuel, and the other members of the leadership team, our social workers, our support staff. They are really working assiduously to ensure that our customer service, it is of a high quality, and not just that. And we are really doing that to ensure that we touch the lives of more individuals. And I just want to encourage them in the efforts as they look to have a positive impact on the society. We also, as I indicated, the Ministry of Health is working in tandem with the Ministry of Equity to develop a national mental health policy to really respond to the needs of persons who experience mental illness. We also have the Ministry of Health, or the Ministry of Equity, working together with Honorable Norbert's ministry. His ministry is responsible for persons with disability, and I know that there has been consultation to draft a policy to respond to the needs of persons with disabilities.
They will have their own units.
Yes, they do have their own units. And like you mentioned earlier on, there is the Ministry of Health, more specifically the Elderly Affairs Unit. They are working to create a policy to better address the needs of our elderly population. And we also have legislation that exists to protect the interests of various vulnerable populations. You have the Domestic Violence Act, and it has been there for some time. Obviously, there is some work when it comes to enforcement and ensuring that the spirit of the act is really felt, and individuals who engage in acts of domestic violence, that these individuals are held accountable, and that we also empower the victims of domestic violence. So that is something which is very key for a Ministry of Equity, and also a ministry responsible for gender affairs. You also have the Child Justice Bill, the Child Justice Act. You also have the Child Protection and Adoption Act. So you have lots of pieces of legislation which exist to really protect the interests of our vulnerable populations. And I mean, what we have to do, as I indicated very early, is to engage in reflective practice, consistently review these pieces of legislation, and find out whether they are responsive to the current trends that we are seeing in the society, and then amending them or updating them to ensure that we have the legalistic framework to adequately address these issues. And very importantly, in as much as strengthening our legal instruments, we need to ensure that we have the right resources, both technically, financially, to do what is required on our part as social workers, as individuals working in the field of social development. And like I say, on many occasions, in terms of advancing or responding to the needs of vulnerable individuals, it is not just solely the responsibility of the government and its agencies, but that responsibility lies with every single one of us. And I did exemplify the little things that we could do, even as children or young people, to ensure that everyone experiences a sense of social inclusion. And the private sector too has its role to play as a key developmental partner as we seek to address the various issues that we are grappling with as a country.
Definitely, and thank you for that, Mr. Elva. To our listeners, we have Aya Daniel, great job, Elva, Lism Joseph, sorry if I butchered your name. Wonderful program. James Ronald, great Elva. Nelly Gums, good idea. Have monthly interactions also.
She's a nurse. She's from Bellevue, but she works in the U.S. Virgin Islands.
All right,
yeah.
well, she's listening. Thank you for listening. She's saying to have the elderly should have monthly interactions, and it would also help their mental well-being.
Yes.
And also have the elderly involved in fine artwork. All right. So this is from Annalie Burns. And thank you all for listening. And again, Mr. Elva, thank you for gracing us with your presence and with your wealth of knowledge, your wealth of information, as always. So, of course, I will be bringing you back for future programs. And thank the Ministry of Equity for releasing Mr. Elva today to have this knowledgeable program. Okay, so thank you, listeners, and of course we will be back here next Wednesday, God's willing, and of course I promise you another great informative program. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a
Any
wonderful
last
day.
words you'd like to say, Mr. Elva?
Thank you very much, Ms. Bondiemaitre, for having me. And I would like to encourage every member of the society to play the part in terms of ensuring that we have a society which is inclusive and where individuals can achieve their biggest dreams and aspirations. Let us be positive. Let us uplift each other. Let us speak empowerment in the lives of each other.
Okay, thank you for that. All the best. Okay.